Dominic Lovett, the wide receiver from Georgia, is quickly becoming a fan favorite among the Detroit Lions fans. A player that was projected far below his consensus big board of a fifth round pick, but in reality, of course, went in the seventh round. A player that had not one but two successful stints at separate SEC programs, and a player that NFL analysts marked as one that would eventually develop into a starting role in the NFL, is one that Brad Holmes was able to steal in the seventh round. He is being marked as the biggest steal of the NFL draft for the Detroit Lions, and a player that could eventually develop into a really strong contributor on both special teams and for the offense. Now, Dominic Lovett is a very interesting player. Standing at 5'10", 185 pounds, his frame won't necessarily stand out at you. His projected fifth round pick, of course, was a little bit higher than what actually happened in reality, and his 6.66 RAS score is never going to jump off the page at you. He did have an impressive 40-yard dash of a 4.4 flat, meaning he does have some wheels on him and he can create separation down the field, but that alone wasn't going to get him drafted. His size is a little bit small, his physicality is a little bit weak, and he doesn't have the best tools for NFL success. He spent 2 years at Missouri before spending his final 2 years as a Georgia Bulldog, so if he doesn't have great athletic traits, he didn't put up great statistical numbers at either college, and really doesn't stand out in any way, shape, or form as a great wide receiver, why did NFL analysts have him as a player that could potentially develop into an NFL starter? Well, let's take a look back at his Missouri tape. In his time at Missouri, his 2 years spent between 2021 and 2022, Dominic Lovett had a really good, strong career. With 84 career receptions, 1,023 yards, and 3 touchdowns through the year, he was a strong contributor on a top-tier SEC program. In his 2022 season, he averaged 70 yards per game, which would end up being his career high through all 4 years of collegiate play, as well as his 15 yards per reception would also mark a career high in that category. In his 2023 season, he had 800 career yards, which marked a career high again at Missouri, before he ended up transferring away to the University of Georgia. In his time as a Bulldog, his career was more successful, but he never reached the heights he did at Missouri. In his 2 years, he totaled 113 receptions, 1,220 yards, and 10 touchdowns through the year, with his final season concluding with 13 of his 14 games having 30-plus receiving yards on the day. He was a reliable weapon for the Georgia Bulldogs, a great slot receiver, and a player that was reliable in the big moments, but never necessarily took that top-tier 1,000-yard receiving season step. He's a player that has good route running and a lot of strengths that will translate to his NFL game, but a lot of concerns that saw him drop to the later rounds of the NFL draft. Taking a look at those strengths and weaknesses, already mentioned it, but the route running is really sharp. He runs routes a lot like Amon-Ra St. Brown, with sudden burst, a lot of quickness off the line of scrimmage, and really tough to get your hands on when he's on his game. He's a player that is a good separator, has good body control, good speed, and can contribute to the Detroit Lions early as a special teams gunner on both punt and kick returns. Some of the weaknesses, he does have some inconsistent hands. There are plays that you'll see him make really big contested catches, and you'll see him make really nice over-the-shoulder grabs, but then there will be plays where he drops wide open balls. Well, he'll let the defensive back get back into the play and break up a pass that he really should have been protecting better. And there were a lot of concerns with his inconsistency as a wide receiver at both Georgia and Missouri. He does lack some physicality. Bigger, more physical defensive backs, especially in the slot, were able to knock him off his route more consistently than you would have liked to see. But those are things that can be developed at the NFL level. He can get stronger hands. He can hit the jugs machine with Amon-Ra St. Brown. He can learn to get off the line with a little bit more physicality to fight through routes with his hands, as well as just his body control that'll help him succeed at the NFL level. I think his strengths far outweigh his weaknesses as a prospect, and watching him at Georgia, there is quite a bit to like. There are quite a few big plays. There is quite a bit of separation, and there is some really good film out there that Dominic Lovett put on display playing in an SEC program and playing for a national title contender. Now, his role in the NFL is going to be pretty slow off to start. I picture a very Matthew Slater-esque role in his early career. Probably won't have the success of Matthew Slater, right? Won't be named in multiple-time All-Pro for the gunner position, but will be that type of player. A technical wide receiver on the roster, but a player that plays primarily a special teams role. He'll cover on punts, he'll cover on kicks, he'll be down there to make tackles, he'll be down there to down the football within the 20 to 1 yard line for Jack Fox's immaculate punts. But he won't be an offensive contributor very early on. And that's pretty easy to tell, right? That's pretty easy to see. However, I do think he runs routes a lot like Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's a shifty slot wide receiver. And I think in a couple of years with a bit of development with, the Detroit Lions new wide receivers coach, I think a little bit of development with just time in the NFL, going against the most physical secondary in the NFL and practice every single day, he could eventually develop into a slot wide receiver. He could eventually develop into the primary backup to Amon-Ra St. Brown, because I do think there are a lot of similarities between the two. The way they run routes, the way they have late hands, the way they are able to just create that separation off the line of scrimmage and be open and be the quarterback's best friend at times, they are things that really stand out. Now, of course, Amon-Ra had significantly better hands coming out of college than Dominic Lovett, but those are things that he can work on. Those are things that he can improve. Those are things that after practice, he can work with Amon-Ra St. Brown and become a better receiver when it comes to consistency at the catch point. And I do think he does have a pretty high developmental upside. Taking a look at the Detroit Lions wide receiver room as of right now, it's pretty stacked, right? St. Brown is an all-pro, back-to-back all-pro for that matter. It isn't going anywhere anytime soon. Jameson Williams has 2 years left on his contract with his final season and a fifth-year option attached onto it, with guys like Tim Patrick, Khalif Raymond, and Isaac Tesla taking primary roles before Dominic Lovett would ever get the chance. However, in 2026, Tim Patrick is no longer under contract, and in 2027, neither is Khalif Raymond. So all of a sudden, you go from, being the sixth player on the depth chart, potentially not making the roster very early, to even being a practice squad player bouncing back and forth to, okay, we've had 2 years to develop this kid. He's worked with a physical secondary. He's worked with the Detroit Lions. He knows the system. He knows the coaching staff. He works with, obviously Jared Goff throughout the offseason and throughout the preseason and through training camp. So now, all of a sudden, with Tim Patrick no longer there, Khalif Raymond potentially not there either, now he's wide receiver 4. Now he's the primary backup to Amon-Ra St. Brown. And even though, again, he's not going to take that spot, he's not going to be a 70, 80, 90, 100 reception type of player, you're going to see him potentially be a 20 to 30 reception wide receiver in his NFL career, get 200, 300, 400 yards and 2 touchdowns in his season. And if you can get that out of a 7th round pick, if you can turn a 200 and whatever-esque pick into a great special teams player and a reliable backup wide receiver to get you 200 to 300 yards and 2 to 3 touchdowns a season, that is a successful pick in the 7th round. That means the Detroit Lions don't have to spend big money on a veteran depth wide receiver because he'll still be on his rookie contract, and that is a successful wide receiver, in my opinion, from the 7th round. Now, what would I grade this pick overall? I think, again, the expectations are low, but the developmental upside is certainly there. I gave it a B+. I think if he comes in immediately, contributes on special teams, downs a couple punts in the preseason, maybe has, 100 yards through 3 games in the preseason and a touchdown, he will very easily make this roster. He may be put on the practice squad early in his NFL career, but I do think he has tremendous upside as far as what you expect from a 7th round pick. Is he going to be a Pro Bowler? Probably not. Is he going to be an all-pro? Most likely he will not become that. But a player like Dominic Lovett has worked hard, has succeeded at 2 different SEC programs, has proven to be a reliable weapon for 4 seasons at the SEC, which is considered widely to be the best defensive conference in college football. If he can succeed there, if he can put up 600, 700, 800 yards, 10 touchdowns at the SEC level, there's no reason he can't eventually become a 2 to 3, even 400 yard player in the NFL to be a reliable backup and potentially play as a wide receiver 4 in the NFL. Will he ever start? I don't know. Does he have the potential to start? I think he does. And I think eventually we'll see that for the Detroit Lions. I think eventually he'll become a player the Lions can learn to rely on. And I think his future is pretty bright in the NFL. So with that being said, that's all I got for you guys right now. Let me know down in the comments below your opinions on Dominic Lovett. Do you think he'll ever become an offensive weapon, or do you think his ceiling is really limited to just special teams contributions? I'm curious to your guys' opinions and thoughts. But with all that being said, thank you all so much for watching. If you yet to go down and subscribe, please go down below and do so. Helps the channel out a ton. And if you hit the bell notifications, you will never miss a Lions upload. But with that being said, thank you all so much for watching. And until next time, and as always, go Lions.